So I say, you don't ever participate. In the space program, they bring space engineers, space scientists, rocket experts, and people that study the planets and their movement. The average person can't participate. So I said, did you participate in the space program? They say, no. Did you participate in the laying out of highways in America? I said, no. Did you select the design of the Capitol building? It's a copy of old Roman architecture. They say, no. Did you prepare the curriculum in school? No. Where the hell do you participate? I never saw anybody participate. But they think they participate during elections. Actually, the people that you vote for are selected by clubs and groups of people that believe in this system. You don't pull up a guy that's a socialist, a communist, or a fascist. They don't give them airtime. So you never had a participatory democracy. And I don't believe you've ever had a democracy. The reason I don't believe that is because religion on Sunday, you don't have all points of view. You should on TV. I don't want to forget these ideas. The pyramid is a nothing thing. It isn't for water storage or education. Some king is buried there, and they built that as a... And they said, how did they face it exactly into the North Star? First of all, they put up a tube and looked at North Star, and that gave them the direction. But the way they actually built the pyramids, I was concerned with. They said that the rocks were so accurate that you couldn't put a business card in between. You know? So it was true, you couldn't put a business card. But the way they made them fit together, they whipped the slaves and moved them this way, and that went to the ground together. You know what I mean? So they were smooth. If you move them up like 100 times, heavy stones. How did they do that? With ropes. They put the ropes around, which they made out of hemp. Mm-hmm. They were about that thick. Yeah. And they put water on them. And it's hot in Egypt. When the sun shines, it shrinks. And that pulled a heavy rock. No people can pull that rock.
Nice.
That's how they moved it up and back. The Romans did the same thing. To lift up the columns, some columns were made of sections. Some were complete. So they built a baffle here, put ropes on the high end, wet it, and when the sun would shrink them, put them up this high. Then they'd retie ropes, wet them, and shrink them, put them up to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure, they devised methods, but no magic.
No anti-gravity.
Magic comes from metaphysics. Metaphysical people believe you can see the human aura. You know what that is? Mm-hmm. Mm. They all believe, they want to believe that because they want to believe that the brain, the mind, they say, is not material. I'm sure you've heard that. Mm-hmm. The mind is something else. And does the mind exist after we die? That's the question they have asked me. I'm just trying to give you the way things are done. Now, if you take a radioactive material called polonium and you put it in the, drill a hole in it and put it in there, if you hit the speech centers, you can't speak anymore. If you hit the visual centers, it discharges the electrons and you can't see anymore. So it must reside in the brain. If you get a brain tumor in a certain area, the guy's eyes are perfect, but he can't see, or he can't speak, or he can't do arithmetic. So it must reside in the brain. Now, in a magnetic recording device, the wiring goes past the magnet, and the magnet demagnetizes the wire and magnetizes it. That's how speech exists in a recording device, by magnetic domains or electrostatic or microscopic etching. A phonograph record has zigzags in it, so the needle bounces up and back. When a person speaks, how are you, Sam? Moves up and back like that. When you spin it, it sounds like somehow it's in the record, but you can't find voice in the record. You can't find it if you look at it in a microscope. It's in the grooves. You understand what I'm saying? So the metaphysician, in order to stay in power and win arguments, is always looking for magic somewhere. Now, the most difficult thing to understand is jealousy. See, so in the future, I'll use an example of Roxanne. If Roxanne fell in love with a younger guy than me, or an older guy than me, there's nobody older than me. Fell in love with a younger or older guy, if that's what she wants, it means that I'm not meeting her needs. And if I love her, really love her, I will help her pack, because that's what she wants. But in this country, we say, God damn it, you're breaking up the home. You're my wife. You're not going to get a lead. I'll break your back. You leave this home. You know, that isn't love. What happens to love during divorce? The wife says, I want the kids in the house. Where's all the love? Where's it gone? Is there really such a thing? No, there's not. Like I said, love fluctuates. Yeah. So people don't even know how to love. But in the future, the word love will be thrown out and replaced by another word called extensionality. That means if you're a pilot and say your right wing catches fire, if you side slip, you can burn the fire off the wing. So a guy that you meet will say, in case your building catches fire, wet a blanket, lower yourself because smoke rises. That's extensional to you, really extensional, not patriotism. I swear to uphold the Constitution. That is not any measure of patriotism. Patriotism and love is what you do to extend another person's mind or life. A girl is flattered today by you give her jewelry. She says, oh, how wonderful, you should have done that. Then take it back and see what happens. So it's all a bullshit world. So I'm saying, you know what extensionality means? A person that can extend your ability to understand the world you live in. That's real love. Yeah. So I think I try to give everybody the best information I have, unless it's commercial. The guy says, in your helicopter, I notice you don't have an anti-torque propeller. You know what that means? When a helicopter blade goes around, the body tends to turn the other way. So they have a propeller in the back that keeps it straight. But if they say to me, your helicopters don't have that, how come? I don't tell them, because that could be a commercial product. I don't want them to come to my meetings just to take all the wonderful ideas, patent them. That's what they did to me in the past. They used to come up to my table at the aircraft factories, watch what I was working on, and take out patents on it. Do you understand? They had no conscience.
That's competition.
Well, it's crude, I thought, and cruel. And the aircraft company owns everything you think of. Did you know that? When I go to work for Douglas and invent new things, they own everything I think of. And if some guy makes a new carburetor in his garage and sells it to General Motors, they say, and now General Motors brings you, like General Motors did. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So inventors in the future will be taken care of like everybody else. They'll live well, drive the best cars the country knows how to turn out. There'll be no junk equipment that breaks down. Because if it breaks down, it's a burden on society. It's a burden on resources. Do you understand that? So if you drive a Mercedes or some expensive car, and he drives a beat-up old Volkswagen, if his brakes fail, you die. So we don't want any old cars on the road. An old car weighs as much as a new car, so we reprocess it. Do you understand that? Yeah. Guy says, boy, you guys are very nice. No, not we're nice. We don't want anything detrimental out there. So we turn out the best equipment and make it available for everybody. Yeah. Not because we're good Joes. If you work with the less than the best, you hurt people and yourself. Okay. Do you understand that? So kids will have any kind of books free of charge made available. Because the smarter the kids are, if they read Jacque and the Beanstalk, it's not extension. If they read Cinderella, where she touches a white mouse with a wand and makes it into a horse. You know, if you bring up kids with that kind of shit, they can't be extensional. Or if you say, do you run faster than Billy? Billy could be sent to. You understand? So what if you run faster than Billy? When I was a kid in school, kids used to walk over me and says, I can run faster than you. I said, you can probably run twice as fast as me. so they look for nothing. So what? That's competition.
Yeah,
It doesn't do any good. And then there's a guy with a football that runs through the field, and everybody likes sports.
Yeah.
It's the same fucking story over and over again. Nothing new. You're running with a football, and the people tackle them. As long as they keep you occupied with bullshit like that, you don't move forward. In the future, there's no game that's constant. It's always growing. So when you play tennis against yourself, you get better. And you don't try to get better to beat the other guy, you try to improve your judgment. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Now, if a person is exceptionally creative, very inventive, we put him out in school to teach other kids how to invent. Because he has a method. See, I can teach anyone anything unless their hands are broken or their brain is damaged. I used to work with 50 kids. They'd all get 100. There were no variations in grade. But I worked differently. But if you try to teach kids how to draw, and they look at the other kids drawing, if it's much better than theirs, they don't want to play that game. So I have a partition. And I tell each kid is doing well. You're doing very well. And they all move up slowly. Then in about 3 weeks, they're all good. Then I take away that thing. Yeah. See, you have to know that if I say to you, why can't you be like your brother, upon your father? He cleans everything up and you leave everything around. So when your brother falls down the stairs, you got a grin on his face because he's been mistreated. So you never, when you raise children, hold up one kid as your favorite. Then you make jealousy and envy. When you give kids grades in school, I give you an F for failure. He gets an A. He says, I got an A. And everybody in school knows what grade did you get. So there you get bad feelings.
Yeah.
All wrong. You never grade people. You upgrade those that are behind.
Yeah.
You use the kids that know how to do things faster. Now if you ask people, how do you become creative? They don't know. We know.
Yeah.
So we make everybody creative. I think I told you, I don't know when I talked about telepathy, did I?
No.
All right. So as a kid, people used to come to my seminars, sincere, and they say, what about telepathy? Does that exist? So I said, well, I have never seen examples of it. They said, well, we have. I said, well, call those people in and let's see if they can do that. So we brought a guy over from India named Astoya. He said he never used a telephone, he could always communicate by telepathy. So I said, boy, if you can demonstrate that, I'm ready to give up science. What the hell am I want to bother about? Because what people think is telepathy is parallel values. If you're brought up with somebody, same type books you read, same school, you can walk down the street, look at a situation, look at the guy, and wink, and you get the same reaction if your values are the same. You know what I mean? People think that's telepathy. And then there are women during World War II that get up at night and say, something happened to my son. I know it. I have no doubt about it. And the next day the War Department would bring a notification that their son was killed in action. Doesn't that prove something? So I wrote to the War Department. I said, do you really get letters like that? They said, we got 15,000 letters a day that something happened to my Johnny and nothing happened. You only hear about those that coincidentally happen. Do you understand what I'm saying? I tend to lean that way. Now, I also know that on top of the brain there's a thing called the meninges, and it's like a membrane that prevents information. Even if you think about certain things, it doesn't go out of your head. The meninges cover that. Not only that, but all the nerves have a myelin sheath. You know what that is? Insulation jacket over them. So the nerve can't spill over to another one and I say, good morning, fuck you. It's not like that. The way the brain is rigged, swearing is in a certain area and this is in another area. And when you think of mother, you think of a wonderful gray-haired woman. he thinks of the woman that beat the shit out of him when he was a kid. So we all have different associations. That's why you can't have telepathy. The way our brain stores information is different. Like in his head, communism means dictatorship. Fascism in his head is dictatorship. A liberal is a troublemaker in his head. You understand?
Yeah.
So our associated system is so different. Unless they were identical patterns, we can't influence other people. So years ago, at seminars, I used to hold seminars, people would come and say, what about the things beyond the physical? You're always talking about the physical world. What about the spiritual world? What about telepathy and all that sort of thing? So then I said, I didn't doubt that there was telepathy. I said, I've never seen it. So we chipped in a lot of money, a lot of friends of mine, and we brought a guy over from India who said he has the power of telepathy. I read about him. He was considered the best. His name was Astoya. We brought him over this country, and I said to him, if you can read my mind once, he says, I never use the telephone. I always understand telepathically. I said, if you can demonstrate that once, I will shout it from the highest towers. Why should I want to make a telephone? Why should I be interested in science if people can do that? So I said, can you demonstrate? He says, any time. I said, do you want the sun up or down, full moon? What's the best conditions? He says, no, any time. I said, you mean if I think of something, you can tell me what I'm thinking of? He said, always. I said, what if it's scientific? He says, well, I won't describe it in scientific terms, but I will describe the event. I said, that's good enough for me. So what I pictured was things that the average person doesn't picture. Now, if it's an older person, if you say there's been a death in the family, either 3 weeks or 3 months ago or a year ago. Well, sure, there's always a death in the family when you're 70 years old. When you talk to a young girl, you say you're thinking in terms of why your sister gets all the dates and you don't. You fish around, and there's always certain things that certain people, there's no more than 6 different things that older people think of. The house, the paying rent, getting a job. So he mentions a lot of things, and when you lean forward, that gives him a clue as to whether he's on the right track or not. Do you understand what I mean? Guy, you're thinking of something related to some member of your family. Yeah. Well, you fish around for probability. So what I pictured in my head was a little white mouse. I pictured walking, and it goes out in the zoo and eats an elephant and doesn't get any larger. Because if there's really telepathy, this is outside of the norm. If there's really telepathy, the guy say, how can that little mouse eat the elephant and not get any larger? He'd be amazed. He came up with, I see a deceased wife standing behind you. I never had a deceased wife. But maybe he missed this time. So I then pictured something else, you know what I mean? I pictured things like a wood saw, a carpenter's saw. You know what that is? Mm-hmm. Yeah. The carpenter's saw had 2 legs, and it walks into the forest. And a tree looks at the saw, and the tree cuts the saw in half. That's to make sure if there's telepathy, really, you know, not coincidental. Of course, he didn't get any of the things I thought about. I said, how come? I said, is it because I'm negative? I want to know whether there's really telepathy. Well, he was so poor at what he did, I could see that he was a fraud. Then I went to Trinidad, because there's a large Indian colony in Trinidad, and they believe in levitation and all, and I wanted to see. And so this guy sat on the ground, and he meditated, and he went up in the air. And I looked underneath, and there was a hydraulic system, which he used. And I've been to thousands of seances where the guy put a wheel on the table with magnets, and it kept turning by itself. So I had a magnetometer near the wall, and I could sense the gadget in the wall concerning that. You understand?
There was a lot to
So the many seances I went to, then a guy gave me a book called Nostradamus. You ever hear of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I read that book. The original French book of Nostradamus is what you want. He was always wanted by the French police for fraud. He used to polish a brass parabolic reflector and get the image from a photograph on the reflector and make it appear in the room. I don't know if you know this, but if you take a big parabolic reflector and hold your hand near it, it appears to stick out in the room. So he would take deceased photographs of deceased people and project it in the room and get money from wealthy people. You understand? That's where Nostradamus, in French. The American interpretation was that guy had a lot of mystical powers. Nostradamus said, I can tell you tomorrow's headline without seeing it. So a lot of reporters in the old days came to Nostradamus and he had it sealed in an envelope, tomorrow's headline. And he gave it to a person. And he had the person take an oath that when you hear tomorrow's headline, you say, don't add anything, but just put down, say what I wrote, and don't edit it or anything else. So the guy said, okay. So the guy came in and says, you know, the Germans invaded England, and whatever was the headline. And the guy read the letter. He opened the thing. Those are the exact words that are on the headlines. That's what it said. Those are the exact words of the headline. Yeah, because he promised not to edit it. But if you don't know that, it's a terrible thing. Now, in his pocket, he had a pencil and paper, and he wrote the headline. Then he gave the reporters that after the guy brought the headline in. That's in the book on Nostradamus in French. Now, if you get... Then a guy I met named Frank Scully, that's his real name. He wrote a book, The Secrets of the Flying Saucers. The book was called Behind the Flying Saucers. And so he invited me to examine the photographs of flying saucers that people took. So I don't know whether there's flying saucers or not, but I work for them. So I know a great deal about perspective and photography. So the saucers that I saw pictures of were about this size compared to the trees in the background. Now I can analyze a photograph and say they are not real. But one photograph I couldn't. There was a 3/4 angle with 3 balls under the flying saucer and windows, that is, circular windows. And I looked it up, took me a while, and it was a chicken brooder from Sears and Roebuck that the guy photographed at an angle. So I said, so far, Frank, there's no basis for flying saucer. Then he brought about, I say, 30 or 40 people in his home that had actually seen flying saucers. I was to interview them. I said, what was it like inside the flying saucer? There's a lot of blinking lights and a big safety belt on the seat. Now anybody that can fly through space, millions of miles, doesn't need a safety belt. You know what I mean? Yeah. They wouldn't have a million blinking lights. Like if you got an instrument in your airplane, it moves instruments. And it tells you your fuel mixture is too rich. So the pilot adjusts the fuel mixture. But in the future, as the instrument hits that, the fuel mixture is adjusted. You don't need to make an adjustment. Do you understand what I'm saying? High tech in the future doesn't have dials and instruments. His projections inside the flying saucer, he said it had anti-gravity motor. I said, it did? The guy said, yeah. I said, what was the motor like? I can pencil paper to draw it. He said, well, I don't know enough about motors. So I said, how do you know it was anti-gravity? He said, well, what else could it be? So I can't accept that. So every flying saucer description that I got was more like the stuff we had today. Then he says, I said, why did they come here? They came here to tap our high energy transmission lines for electrical energy. If the sun is out there with all that energy, they don't have to come here to tap the transmission line. Do you understand what I mean? So I said, I'm sorry, Frank Scully, I reject that. Then he says, I want you to meet Dr. G. I says, I never heard of him. He said, he worked at Wright Field, and he took a flying saucer apart. And so he's the guy you really want to talk to. So this guy came in. His name, he wouldn't give me his name. He just said, Dr. G. So I said, tell me about the flying saucer. He said, well, we took it apart. It landed in some Arizona. And we took it apart. I said, if you said a diamond drill couldn't drill through it, and no saw would cut it, it was such hard material, we didn't know what it was, how did you take it apart? He said, well, it came apart like a jigsaw, but you had to figure that out. And he worked at Wright Field during the war, he said. I was stationed in design development at Wright Field. I never saw him. So I said, I didn't know. He said, well, I came there after you left. Well, maybe he did. I don't know. So I said, do you have a piece of that flying saucer since you took it apart? He said, yes, in my car. I said, great. Would you mind bringing it in? And he brought it into the house, and it looked like lucite to me. You know what lucite is? Plexiglass. What they make airplane windows out of. So it looked like lucite, but I didn't know what it was. He said, we couldn't drill it or cut it or anything. The toughest material we ever encountered. So I said to Mrs. Scully, can I use your oven? She said, of course. So I tied it in a knot. The way our brain stores information is different. Like in his head, communism means dictatorship. Fascism in his head is dictatorship. A liberal is a troublemaker in his head. You understand? Yeah. So our associated system is so different. Unless they were identical patterns, we can't influence other people. But we can, like if you say to a girl, you're very attractive, I like your voice and your eyes, she's flattered by that. But those words are used for seduction. A guy doesn't come up to me and say, I love your voice, and I love the way your eyebrows look, and your dimples when you smile. Nobody talks to me that way, unless the guy is gay. And I have nothing against anybody, but I'm just telling you that the way we talk to women is unreal. I don't talk to women that way. I talk to them the same way I talk. That's why I use profanity, because women say, we want to be treated as equals. Okay, fuck you. And you can talk about anything. Why not? Why shouldn't you? Why should you just have a special language for women? And do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
If men say they'd like to get laid, so they seduce a woman. They take her out to dinner and violin music. The girls have had a wonderful time, you know. But you don't say, look, the world is fucked up or anything. You can't talk. You're not going to get laid that way. Besides, if you get laid, you say, hey, I just got laid. And if a guy is screwing 5 women, he's called Don Juan. If a girl goes to bed with 3 guys or 2, she's a tramp. Who wrote the book? The men. You understand? They're full of shit. I'm trying to tell you. So the world you live in is so phony, I hardly know where to start.
Yeah.
That's why I'd rather answer your questions.
Yeah.
Because we may not see the answer in what I'm talking about. Okay. Yes, this is he. James Benson is whatever, Kennedy. You got a list of names, but after that list, it's movie actors, whatever else. But if you don't know, before you investigate metaphysics, read up on techniques for making people disappear and reappear. Before you do, you're not qualified as an investor.
Yes.
I did not go to disprove anything. I went to see if it's so. But I had to study up on it before I went. I approached the American Psychological Association and said, I have new ways of treating alcoholics and people. I would like to address you. They said, are you a student of psychology? I said, no, not formally. And is your father a psychiatrist? I said, no, we don't want to hear you. So I've been turned down continuously. but I did not keep it to myself. I did try to get it out there. And very few newspapers would run this type of stuff. They think I'm some kind of a charlatan because they say, what are your credentials? Well, what's Edison's credentials? None. What's Louis Pasteur was not a doctor, he was a chemist. Alexander Graham Bell used to teach the deaf how to speak. He made the telephone. It didn't come from the establishment. Do you understand?
Yes.
It can't come from the establishment because the establishment has a way of thinking. So new ideas have to come from the outside.
Yeah.
That's why the Venus Project is open. If there's anything you feel is bad about it, please tell us about it. We're not here to keep the Venus Project going. It's the best we know up to now. If you don't like the city-side design, don't say I don't like it. Say the doors they open that way and people can walk into a door. You should have sliding doors. Oh, great, but I don't get that kind of criticism. So anybody that's afraid of criticism, watch out for. Anybody that says there are things beyond the physical, like what? I don't know. Spiritual.
Yeah.
What's spiritual? What do you mean by spiritual? And the person says, I'm a spiritual person. I say, you mean you have no locks on your doors? You always take the poor in your house and feed them? Oh, no. And what the hell do you mean by spiritual? How spiritual? If everybody is God's children, do you love everybody, no matter what they do? Because the Bible says, if a man strikes you, turn the other cheek. The old Jewish Testament says, if a man takes your son's eye out, you take his son's eye out. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So all these gods are so different. I asked Einstein when I was a kid, do you believe in God? And he said, which one? No. Do you understand that? And he wrote the foreword to the book called Man and His Gods, recommending the book. So when people think Einstein really believed in God, you get that book where he endorses the myths of religion and points them out.
Yeah.
We can't put, if we try to visualize the future, it's the same families and all that stuff. So when I make movies on the future, I have to use families in there. There'll be no families. Most people won't want children. But today, that's normal. So you have to use that if you really want to change people. Otherwise you come at them and go, what the hell are you talking about? I wouldn't want to live in your world. Your grandmother, I told you, if you took her to Miami Beach and she saw the girls with their butts hanging out, she'd say they've gone too far. Now she's right where she's coming from, but not today. But you got to understand your grandmother was brought up in a different world. So we teach the kids in school that your parents and your grandfather were brought up at different times and their values are different than ours. But don't look at them as bad. Understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
That the Indian is not stupid. All they do in their culture is dance around a fire, and because that's all they know. That's all they've been exposed to. Mm-hmm. But if you tell them that an Eskimo doesn't worry about how a diesel engine works, because he's never been exposed to that. That's why you don't have Eskimos asking, what's the function of valves in airplanes? He can't ask that question. So normal women, for example, if you go out with a girl and your car conks out, she says, just a minute, lifts up the hook, makes it, just try it now. What's your work? We don't like that. We like to be the guy that fixes the car. So we're brought up with values that hurt one another. We don't like a girl that says, I'm a doctor, surgeon, I'm professor of biology.
Yeah.
We resent that. Be a woman. What the hell does that mean? Be stupid as you used to be? Mm-hmm. So we live in a world that's transitional. It's undergoing change continuously. That's where the problems come from. People are not brought up to look forward to change. How many of you know what nanotechnology is? Will you raise your hand?
Heard about it.
It's taking atoms and arranging them in different molecular patterns so you can make anything. You don't need to mine diamonds or gold. You can make a beefsteak if you can arrange the atoms without killing a cow. So with the advent of nanotechnology, the nanotechnologists say we're about 15 years away from that. Or say 25 years. That's wonderful. Then there'd be no scarcity of any kind anymore. So let's do a hell of a lot of research on nanotechnology.
Yeah.
And those of you that have seen my pictures of shape memory alloys, how many of you have seen it? Materials that remember.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you've never seen that, it's very hard to think that way.
Yeah.
So we think that memory materials have one memory. If you make a spring, it'll go back to that. If you spell out Jesus Christ with a wire, straighten it out, and then heat it, it goes back to Jesus Christ. You can build a following with that if you want to use it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can get a lot of people in line. But it only has one memory. And people think somebody invented that. Nobody did. Some Swede mixed nickel and titanium to get different metals to see what results would be. And he bent it, left it on a table in front of a heat lamp, and it straightened out again. And he was just as confused as anybody. Nobody ever invented anything. They always pick it up from something in nature. Electricity has been in nature for years.
Yeah.
You know, yes.
And if something is out of people's frame of reference, then they see it as magical. But if you examine something, you put it to test scientifically.
That's what you have to do. Explain it to people that don't know that.
Yeah.
If you fail to do that, you fail to take on your responsibility. If we fail to accept responsibility for our own future, others will do our thinking for us.
Yeah.
That's called fascism.
Yeah.
They're going to do what's best for you. But science is not a method of doing something that's best for scientists. What scientists do is say, don't live near a swamp with the mosquitoes that carry malaria. That's not for their gain. They don't sell you anything. They advise you so that the future is not self-centered. It's oriented toward the group. Is that clear?
Yeah.
And if we live a self-centered life, the group losses are higher. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The next question, Jacque, is regarding the introducing of a resource-based economy. Is there any place that you would see as preferable for this?
Our website.
Location.
Our website has tons of questions and answers, information, books, videotapes, everything. And when we sell the videotapes, that's how we support the project.
Yeah.
We can't do our research. It takes me 2.5 years to build the models for a 15-minute film. How do you do that? We need support. Yes.
Yeah, of course.
He's asking if there's any a physical place, right, that would be best to build the resource-based economy of the first city.
We will build it anywhere in any country that wants to build it.
Okay.
But it'll be a different size, different design, depending on the climate. You know, it has to be designed for that area.
Ideally,
Besides, I don't know, ideally the tropics,
yeah,
because there's more sunlight, more energy.
flat in the tropics,
And flat.
someplace where it's warm and hot, so you can use solar and take advantage of all that.
Okay. So in the tropic
It's
belt.
easier to build, yeah.
Yeah.
Over the clan?
Yeah. How
That's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah,
What I did at the beginning, I befriended the leader. I found out who he was. If you could befriend the leader, that's important. Here's how I did it. He owned a war surplus store. You know what that is? World War II, the government sold surplus of equipment. And I used to buy a lot of scientific stuff, lenses and optical devices from him. So he said, what do you do with that stuff? So I said, well, I have a lab. He said, gee, I said, why don't you come out and I'll show you? And he liked what he saw. He saw things he never saw before. So he says, you're smart. You know, this is what he said.
Yeah.
So he said, would you mind coming down to a clan meeting and tell them what you're working on? I said, Lou, his name was Lou Merlin. They would never listen to me. He said, don't worry about that. I'll get him to listen to you. Southern accent. Because what you say is important. I says, Lou, do you agree with what I say? He says, I'm not smart enough to understand everything you say, but what you say makes a lot of sense. I says, well, what if they don't want to listen? He says, I'll get them to listen to you. So he said, I want you guys to listen to this Jacque. He got a lot of good ideas. So what I did is I took my little girl when she was about 2 years old. I put a cigarette in her mouth, and I used a gun and a mirror at 40 feet. I split the cigarette near her mouth. So Lou Merlin watched that, and he said, "You the best shot I ever saw." He said, "But I wouldn't do that with my own kid." He said, "You might miss and hurt her." So I said, "No, I feel very confident. I really didn't do that with my own kid. I cut the cigarette with a razor blade, and I put a hairpin in it, and when she rolled her lips a certain way, the hairpin blew tobacco all over the place when I fired a blank." You understand?
Yeah.
But Lou said, "You the best shot I ever saw." That impressed him. Will you come on down to the Klan meeting and talk about guns and how to shoot? You know, so I did that. You know, they didn't know what rifling was, how it spun the bullet, and centrifugal force kept the bullet on course. I talked a lot about guns and weapons because they were interested in that. Then after that, there was a time Lou said, "I want you to tell them the way you think." So I showed them a lot of stuff, and it's scratching their heads, you know. A lot of them are very uneducated people who don't know nothing about technology, except guns, automobiles and motors, electric motors. They knew that, but they didn't know enough about society, anthropology, human behavior. So I began to fill them in. I used to train dogs and animals, dogs mostly to lead the blind. When I was a kid, they walked with a white stick. So I used to train dogs to take them down the street, you know, and stop when there's a red light. Dogs can't see color, but they see shades.
Yeah.
So I learned how to do that. But a sweet old lady walked over and touched one of my dogs and said, "What a nice, kind dog." You know, and I said, "No, ma'am, I could have trained that dog to tear soldiers to pieces. I trained it to lead the blind. Dogs are neither good nor bad. Depends on the way they're brought up." Do you understand that?
Yeah.
She says, "Yeah, I never thought of it that way." I said, "That's the way it is." And she got that right away. So then, as a kid, I said, "How do you know you can change people?" Yes. You have a
I was going to
question?
go back to the
What's that?
Klan thing.
Yes. So the Klan, I said to Lou, "You can look at people and tell us all about them right away, and you don't even know them." He said, "I'm born that way. That's a natural gift." So I said, "Will you teach us how to do that?" He says, "Jacque, I didn't think I can teach you anything." "Well, I'd be delighted to teach you how I do that." I said, "Very good, Lou." So he said, "Come on down to the next Klan meeting, and I'll work on how you can tell what people are like without knowing them." So I figured, I brought my own equipment down, and I projected an image on the wall, on the screen, of a guy with a white mustache and gray hair, good-looking guy. And I said, "Lou, tell us all you can about him." I says, "I know you don't know who he is." He said, "No, I don't. But I'll tell you one thing, he's a war veteran. He's a good American and a good Christian." He was very white. He looked respectable, yeah. And Lou was projecting his own values. And when he got through, I said, "Lou, is there anything else you can add to it?" He said, "No, that pretty much sums it up." So then I pulled the bottom of the picture out, which I got from the post office. So wanted by the FBI for subversive activity against the United States.
Huh.
And the 30 members of the Klan were laughing at Lou for the first time. So I said, "You guys shut your mouth. Lou goofed up this time. We all make mistakes, don't we? So don't get angry at him. He's doing his best."
Yeah.
And because if I taught him apart, I'd lose it. In the old days, I wasn't smart enough to do that. I would agree with the those that laughed. But it didn't work that way. So I learned to say, we'll try another thing. So I had a record, which I played. It's a guy talking about aviation with a heavy English accent, Oxford. So I said, "Lou, picture that guy." Says, I see a skinny white man with eyeglasses and a bald head. Smart college graduate, because the language he used about airplanes. Aeroplanes, he said. And he's a smart guy, and he's telling us. And then 15 minutes after the record is on, the image comes on. It's a black guy raised in England, speaking with an Oxford accent, an aeronautical engineer. And Lou says, goddamn nigger talking like an Englishman. How come? That's what his reaction. So I said, well, that nigger was brought up in a different environment. So if you took a nigger, this is his words, and you brought him up in France, he'd speak with it like a Frenchman. If you brought him up in Italy, he'd speak like an Englishman. In Italian. If I took your son, Lou, and brought him up by a black Negro family, black, nigger, that's the word he used, nigger family, your baby, he said, that's right, you're right, just like a Negro. Do you understand that, Lou? He said, you mean to say niggers act like niggers because they're brought up in the nigger environment? I said, Lou, that's not what I'm saying. I showed him French movies of blacks brought up in France. In Sweden, they speak Swedish. They don't speak like a black man. And they don't all jazz. That's in America. You know, all blacks are different. They don't all like watermelon, you know, all the stuff we project out there. So Lou said, you got any proof of that? And I said, Lou, you give me a problem with your family or your dogs. Well, my dogs never listen to me. I said, of course they don't, because you don't know how to reach them. He said, well, how do you reach a dog? Dog. I said, doggy. I said, here's how you reach a dog. If you hold them down and say stay and move away, if they get up, when you say stay, hold them down, give them a little bit of something they like. The dog just gets a little bit. And then if they stay there, pat them on the head when you come back, and don't let them, all animals try to dominate. If you get a new animal, he'll try to go in his own direction. If you pull him and restrict his movement, you're the boss. When a dog comes in the presence of a stronger animal, he'll lie on the ground and says, I don't want to get involved. I don't know if you know that. Lions do that, wolves do that. They fight each other, and the other wolf will lie on the ground like that. He'll fight a little bit, but if the other one is more dominant, more aggressive, he becomes the leader. Also, leadership, I think I try to describe it, when an animal is nursing other animals, the baby animals push some away that are weaker. And that one always becomes a leader. You remember that? Leadership is not inborn, it's a result of. Yes.
You do the immaculate pig. I got the paper. Oh. You can pull that over to you. It's the table in front of you.
Yeah. So what I did as a final thing with the Klan, I made a movie called The Immaculate Pig during the Depression.
Yeah.
I lived in a transit camp that the government built out for the kids that were dispossessed, families thrown out of their home, millions of us. And we were asked to sign in a transit camp. If you left, you couldn't come back. But there were transit camps all over the country. So being in the transit camp, the unemployed psychologist used to run the camps. So I said to the leader, his name was Holt, Dr. Holt, I said, can I do animal experiments while I was in the camp? He said, what kind of experiments? You know, he's a nice guy. So I said, well, I want to see if I can train animals to do things differently than most people do. He said, what kind of difference? So I said, I don't know how far I can go with animals, but I have an idea. I would like to condition a pig, a real pig, to become immaculate. So I said, that's interesting. How would you do that? I explained a little bit. Then he said to me, I have a Bolex camera. Would you mind taking pictures of what you're doing with the animal? I said, no, I'd be delighted. The way I got into animals, I used to catch snakes for the North Miami Zoo. They gave me a nickel a foot. If it was poisonous, 25 cents a foot. So while I had raccoons and other animals in cages, I wanted to see if I can do. I had so many animals, I couldn't maintain them. I had to work 3 hours a day in the transit camp. They gave you 75 cents a week for cigarettes or candy, but we grew our own food. Roosevelt set that up. So in the transfer camp, I wanted money for experimenting. So I used to catch snakes and sell it to the North Miami Zoo. But I couldn't take care of all the animals, so I designed cages from surplus wire I got from buildings. I built wire cages and put the animals in them. Like I'd have 5 raccoons. When they got fed, they get fed at the other end of the cage. But to get there, you had to go through a turnstile. I built a turnstile, the animal had to turn them. And that swept all the crumbs out of their cage down below to the ants that ate the stuff, the dirt. So I could maintain more animals designing stuff like that. So I eventually got to the pig. I put a pig in a cage about 6 feet in diameter. It was dome-shaped, made of wire. When I put the pig in, I put a wastebasket in the middle of the cage. And I put the wastebasket down so it's level with the floor. Can you picture that?
Yeah.
I put some crumpled paper near it. It didn't stick up like this. And I figured that the pig...
Want to draw anything here?
I might
If you need to.
I don't know. But anyway, I figured sooner or later the pig would hit that paper and knock it into the basket. Because any animal put in a cage walks up and back. Or if a man is put in prison, he does walk up and back like an animal. So I figured that would happen in time. I didn't have to be there. I could take care of my other animals. I came back and I noticed that the pig, that this paper was in the basket. Once that happened, nothing happened with the pig. But after 4 or 5 times, I put a micro switch in the bottom of the basket. When the paper hit the switch, a food dispenser dispensed a little bit of food, not much. After the pig had to do it 10 times before he knew that the paper in the basket worked the dispenser of food. Pigs don't do it right away.
Yeah.
Some pigs 10, 15 times. But anyway, once the pig knew that, once the pig put it in the basket, the dispenser dispensed food. I kept moving the dispenser further and further away from the basket. Then I put a second piece of paper there. So when he put the first piece in, nothing happened. But the associative memory of the paper, he picked up the second piece and put it in. Then the dispenser dispensed food. Then I put some dirty rags around, and the pig came in and put them in the basket. Remember, I pulled the basket up, and it says on the basket, put waste here. See, the pig couldn't read or anything. So he'd put the waste in the basket, and he'd go to another room, because I kept moving the dispenser further and further away. Then I designed a bed for the pig. Here's how the bed looked. If you don't understand the drawing, you're supposed to interrupt me. I took a roller made of wood, like that, and another roller here, and ran the bedding all around the roller. Do you understand the drawing?
Mm-hmm.
The bedding is like a war tank, a tractor.
Yeah.
And the pig would sleep on that mattress. When he got up, I made the cage that he slept in very small, so he'd walk up and back a lot, and I put a wheel at this end, connected to that roller. If you put a wheel on a cage with little mice in it, they get in the wheel and run. You don't have to teach them that. Adrenaline. They got a lot of energy. They get in the wheel and they run. The pig got up on this wheel and began to turn it. That changed the dirty bed sheet. I came back and I noticed that the pig, that this paper was in the basket. Once that happened, nothing happened with the pig. But after 4 or 5 times, I put a micro switch in the bottom of the basket. When the paper hit the switch, a food dispenser dispensed a little bit of food, not much. After the pig had to do it 10 times before he knew that the paper in the basket worked the dispenser of food. Pigs don't do it right away.
Yeah.
Some pigs 10, 15 times. But anyway, once the pig knew that, once the pig put it in the basket, the dispenser dispensed food. I kept moving the dispenser further and further away from the basket. Then I put a second piece of paper there. So when he put the first piece in, nothing happened. But the associative memory of the paper, he picked up the second piece and put it in. Then the dispenser dispensed food. Then I put some dirty rags around, and the pig came in and put them in the basket. Remember, I pulled the basket up, and it says on the basket, put waste here. See, the pig couldn't read or anything. So he'd put the waste in the basket, and he'd go to another room, because I kept moving the dispenser further and further away. Then I designed a bed for the pig. Here's how the bed looked. If you don't understand the drawing, you're supposed to interrupt me. I took a roller made of wood, like that, and another roller here, and ran the bedding all around the roller. Do you understand the drawing?
Mm-hmm.
The bedding is like a war tank, a tractor.
Yeah.
And the pig would sleep on that mattress. When he got up, I made the cage that he slept in very small, so he'd walk up and back a lot, and I put a wheel at this end, connected to that roller. If you put a wheel on a cage with little mice in it, they get in the wheel and run. You don't have to teach them that. Adrenaline. They got a lot of energy. They get in the wheel and they run. The pig got up on this wheel and began to turn it. That changed the dirty bed sheet. Not that the pig knew he was changing the dirty bed sheet. Then I leave the door partly open and put food out there, and the pig was trying to get to the food and he couldn't. But if he got up on that wheel and kept turning it, it opened the door. So he kept turning the wheel. I put a ratchet so the wheel only turns one way, can't be turned backward. So he'd open the door and he'd get the food. The next thing I wanted the pig to do was take a shower. You can't walk over to a pig and say, take a shower. So I conditioned the pig to take a shower. Here's how I did it. I bent the rubber hose, like the letter U. Can you picture that? Put some bamboo strips down. The bamboo strips were a little lower than the pig's height. So when he walked under that, that was outside his cage into the big cage with the dirty rags. So when he walked out, it scratched his back. Pigs like that. So he turned around and he walked up and back. Can you understand that? Yeah. Okay. Then I changed the bamboo to wire later. So when he went under and touched the wires, it turned on the water faucet. Do you understand? If he walked up and back 8 times, the water shower is coming down. Yeah. And I put a little jacket on the pig called the Immaculate Pig. It was white, and it said the Immaculate Pig. So he got up, changed his bed sheet, took a shower, went in the room, picked all the dirty rags, put them in the basket, and I'd run that film at a clan meeting after other films. And say, I raised me a lot of pigs, Jacque. I ain't never seen no pig that smart. How come that pig's that smart? That's because I raised it in a different environment. He said, I don't get that. And I'd show him how you train animals to do things. I explained how I did it, and what learning was, and all that. And he says, you mean to say people are born, not born that way? Niggers are born dumb, and Swedes are big Swedes are dumb. You know, and Irishmen are drunkards. They all believe that. I said, no, they're raised in an environment where have a drink. It's normal. Sometimes people are not raised in that environment. Their father was an alcoholic. They're very bitter against alcohol, and that's where they become non-alcoholics. Different people in different environments. If mother and dad fight a lot, you might go, boy, I'm never getting married. You know, depends on your experiences. Your decision-making is shaped by experience. Can you understand that?
Yeah.
Well, I got that across with the Immaculate Pig. That was a major film. It was done like 60 years ago. It dried out. I wish I had a copy of that. So now we make other films. I can't take 6 months out to train animals to do that, but we're making films trying to help people understand these things. Well, the Immaculate Pig, we have to make a lot of films like that. Do you understand it?
Yeah.
There are some people that can't stand a speck of dirt on the floor. They always pick it up, put it in the wastebasket. That's, psychologists call it compulsion neurosis. It's not. There's no such thing. They invent words. They say, this man's a racist. That means you were brought up that way. So psychiatry invents labels, compulsion neurosis. You know, all kinds of labels. They're stupid beyond description. They don't understand that environment makes you that way. If you hate Polacks or Jews or Swedes, it means you were brought up in an environment where it says the Jews control all the money. and they take it away from the Gentiles. Well, where do the Gentiles keep getting all the money that the Jews take away from them? You know what I mean? The whole thing is ridiculous. So they say Arabs live in the past. Well, that's because their environment is in the past. You know, they never change the building designs. They have certain notions of what a church looks like. And if a church gets a $10,000 donation, they put a chandelier in. If they were churches of God, they'd give that surplus money to the poor. They wouldn't put a new chandelier in. As I understand Jesus, if there was a soft bed, he said, you sleep and I'll sleep on the floor. Jesus would never take the soft bed, says, I'm the Christ, you know. They don't understand the Bible they read at all. It said, love thine enemy in the Bible. That's what it says.
Yeah.
If a man strikes you, turn the other cheek. You don't want to kill him. And it says, judge not, lest you be judged. The Lord's Prayer says, thine will be done on earth as it is in heaven. There's no money in heaven, no property, no banks, no lawyers. So what we talk about, the Venus Project, is more like religious teachings than all the religions put together. They don't see that relationship. I use these films to help people understand that dogs are neither good nor bad, people are neither good nor bad. They're brought up in an environment where I asked the head of the gypsies once in California when he was there. I said, are the gypsies really permitted to steal? He said, yes. I said, I didn't know that. Where do you get that from? I didn't criticize him. He said, well, years ago when they crucified Christ, the gypsies stole the pegs that they crucified him with, and they delayed the crucifixion, and they were given the right to steal. That's what he was taught when he was a kid. So if you don't inquire into people where they got that from, most of them say, I don't know. But there are people that know where it came from.
Yeah.
So when you say, I'm a Frenchman, and another man says, oh, vive la France, And you say, I'm a Nazi, oh, I'm glad to hear that. I used to go to Nazi meetings. They always had American flag and the swastika. And they would talk about their philosophy. Their philosophy was based upon their opinions, no research or work. That's why I rejected it. They said, we want a pure race. There can't be a pure race, because over the centuries, different people invaded countries and raped the women, and you can't have a pure Jew, pure Italians. There's no such thing. Over the millions of years that man has been on earth, there's been invasions, rape, everything, so you're never pure anything. You understand?
Yes.
All right. People don't know that. Somehow they're not taught those things. So the movies of the future, there'll be no soap operas except during the transition. Every soap opera is the same kind of shit people see today. But in the soap opera, the kid says, Daddy, I want to study social psychology. He says, what's that? It shows a little bit of what it is. So every soap opera is a manipulating machine to bring people around to a new way of thinking. Although we use the old soap opera format, in it is turning devices. Then we have a movie on the future. And in this movie, people are sitting in a home, and they're looking at a full-wall television. And they say, boy, we got sound around, full wall, we have everything. And then they say we have everything, bingo, it fades out, and stereoscopic movies come on. There's no such thing as everything. Everything keeps changing. We use movies to show people that the guy used to drive a horse and wagon. Then a guy got an automobile. It broke down. Get a horse, If man was meant to fly, he'd been born with wings. If man was meant to wear clothing, he'd have been born with clothing. Or live in a house. There are always people that say that man was not meant to fly. Man was not meant to do this. Well, you're not meant to shave either. Mm-hmm. And the religions that don't shave, it's a sin to shave. And some religions believe man was put here on earth to worship God. That's all I'm praying. How great thou art. God is wonderful. God is everything. They believe that in the Middle East. And they pray 5 times a day. They fall on the ground. when we went to Dubai, they didn't pray that day. They forgot. They said, you were so interesting, we forgot to pray. So, anyway, I wasn't there long enough to turn them around. I was taken on a trip to see Dubai. They brought me there to design the tallest building in the world. I said, what for? It's all for ego.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go into that too much. But you understand how I worked on the Klan now?
Regarding the research center, we'd like to know, we noticed that you're thinking of selling the research center in Venus, and
the rent and electric bills are about $5,000 a month,
yeah,
and we can't afford that. We don't get that much support.
yeah,
So I don't want to sell it. I'd
I
rather
used
keep
to
it.
support it financially with my work. I had architectural rendering and model business.
yeah,
Jacque taught me how to do all that.
okay,
And when the mortgage crisis hit, that was the last time I've had a job. So we can't maintain it anymore because we get no outside support. There has been some donations since I got its addendum, but not any place near the amount that it takes to keep that going.
Well, I told you
So
it
we're
takes
forced to
me
sell.
2.5 years to make the models for a movie,
yeah,
which you saw there. And we got to have model building facilities. We got to shape plastics, and we can't do that without, in the monetary system, without support.
yeah,
And there's no fat guy with a cigar that says, what do you need? That would be nice.
yeah,
But since we didn't have that, we used everything we earned. And she
We
did all
worked
the
on the
cement work on
outside.
all the building. She did I did the structures of the buildings. So we put up all the buildings ourselves.
Yeah.
Then
We
I
did all
planted
the books.
5,000 trees. I dug holes, put in fruit trees, oranges, bananas, grapefruit, and made the place look like a tropical garden. And people say, how did you find that place? We didn't find it, we made it. Roxanne and I built everything there. And to show people that you can have nature, beauty, and high tech without destroying each other.
We even
That's
published
why
our
we
own
built it.
books. You know, we make everything, we financed everything. We
yeah.
still do.
With our own earnings.
So it's not that you have any ideas on what you're going to do with
None.
the purchasing power.
Oh, with that?
Yeah,
Well, that's, whatever we make from the sale of the land, we have to travel around, look for where we want to live, build something else and live the rest of our lives on it.
yeah,
So, I mean, it's minimal when you think of that.
yeah,
And take care of our health needs and, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's not like we can build a center with that.
No, unfortunately not.
But we try and move someplace where we can build maybe
Somewhere in the
something
tropics,
with
where we got
more rooms
solar
where the
power.
people can come.
We can't pay the electric bills, they're too high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is too expensive.
And we can't afford solar. So the question is, if we get a donation, say of $3,000, we buy a camera, that's the cost of high definition camera.
Yeah.
Our films have to look good, professional. It can't be a backyard film where you're holding your camera.
That's what we did with the funding from the Zeitgeist donations that we had just gotten since the film came out. We can't live off those donations. We can't pay the electric bills because it's not set up that way. We can't do
Maintain
anything on
the
our
10
land.
buildings.
But we did buy computers, new cameras, lighting, which we needed, and to do more films.
That's great.
So that's what we've done with the donations. A lot of people ask, you know, can we see how much money you have, what you're doing with it? We're not allowed legally to live off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people say
It's
to
a
us,
nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
That's what they're donating to.
We would just love for you to keep going on this project and have somewhere else to do
Well,
it.
any place we move to, we'll be working on it. We would never stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
any
I
place
see.
in the world is the same to me since I'm international in my point of view. But I will turn them around wherever we're at. To
There seems to
understand
be a lot
that
of possibilities.
it's not
lately.
it's
And more
not
exposure.
women's rights or black rights or Jewish rights. All humans need access to all the necessities of life. Do you understand that?
Yeah, definitely.
Stop working for black, Jewish problems, Irish. I don't want.
It
That's
doesn't solve
dividing
the
people.
problem.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Well, we want to bring people together. So in our schools, we have blacks, Orientals, and the kids grow up with them. So the kids don't have any bias. It's the parents that say, you don't play with that goddamn Jew. You don't play with that goddamn Irish kid. The parents poison their kids. They don't mean to, but that's the way they're brought up. I'm not mad at the parents. I understand where they're coming from. I don't want to put them in jail or kill them. I want to make movies to turn the parents around, to show them that they're French, but they're alive because of Louis Pasteur. God, saying, if I want to turn them around, if you take their God away, they're left with nothing. You must give them something else. You must tell them that the God they worship is not a guy that makes people suffer or plants disease. That's man's interpretation of God. Don't belittle God. Don't make him, don't produce a pinhead, a guy that gets angry, makes floods. That's not God. That's some jerk who can't conceive of how all this came about. But the scientists say, I don't know where this came from. When Galileo found seashells on the mountaintop, he was amazed because he said maybe mountain was once under the sea and pushed up. So he took it to the Catholic Church because they believed. And he said, why is there seashells on the mountaintop? So they called their technical advisors and they said Satan put them there to confuse people. Now you laugh at that, but if you were brought up under those conditions, you say, I guess that's it. So the church was always counter to, like when the bubonic plague killed half the earth's population. The people went to the church and said, why did God permit that? And here's the answer the church gave. The children shall suffer for the sins of the parents. So don't do any bad things, don't fuck around. And God made the devil who said, screw your best friend's wife, have a ball. He made the tempter to try to tempt you. Well, what the hell kind of thing is God if he makes a tempter, kicks you out of the garden? Parents that raise children, I believe, try to make them better than they are in every way they know how. God made so many people, so many dummies that kill in his name. More people were killed in the name of God than all the wars combined. So how can you respect religion?
Yeah.
If there's a prison called Sing Sing, upstate New York, and you go there and you'll see guys wearing crosses around their neck, religion did not make people any better, any less jealous, any more understanding. Do you understand?
Yeah.
It did not solve problems. So I say, you don't ever participate. In the space program, they bring space engineers, space scientists, rocket experts, and the metaphysician, in order to stay in power and win arguments, is always looking for magic somewhere.